Many people think they need to understand everything there is about tech before they can succeed in their businesses online. But what if that belief is actually slowing somebody down? And what if success has less to do with like with mastering the tech and more to do with how you approach it? I've got a guest on today, Carrie. With your background that is in strategy and tech, what do you see most often holding business back, like the business owners back when it comes to growing online?
I find a lot of the people that we work with really just feel like they have to figure everything out before they can even get started. And they're really afraid they're going to do something wrong.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I feel like if we don't make those small steps towards, trying to do something, you're never going to do it. It's kind of like a baby. They have to take, little steps holding on to things or even really pulling themselves up on a piece of furniture first before they can even walk. So we tend to forget that as adults that we need these little baby steps, right? To actually
right,
accomplish that one big thing we want to do, which is get across the room and get that toy that we want, right? Or in our
right.
business, provide our services or products that will, help other people and help other businesses if you're, business to business. So it's just being afraid to take those little baby steps and mess up along the way.
Right. And I've sensed that in myself. And I've been doing online businesses for 15 years. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I can't start this thing. I can't launch this new thing unless I've got my automation sequence in place, and I'm like, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world if things aren't perfect first.
Yeah, and I've even, been in business since 2002. So at this point, it's almost 24 years. It'll be in November. And I still have that problem now. Actually, I have it more now than I did when I started this business when I was 24 or 25, because I was still like a kid and I was like, oh,
Right.
whatever, I'll just, do this thing and I'll figure it out. Well, now I've had to the last, I'd say probably 6 to 9 months to really tell myself, pretend like you're that 25-year-old fearless female again and just do the thing. And I have made so much more progress in restructuring and rebuilding my business this past year than I have the previous 4 years before that when I had, started that process because I stepped back and was like, okay, I need to just do and do little baby steps and be fearless again. And I'll
Right.
learn if I make a mistake,
Right.
and where I might succeed.
Right. And part of the problem for me is like, so I do a lot of marketing, and that's basically what I usually focus on is helping people figure out how to market. And like for me, launching a new product or doing something new or doing anything at all, I'm like, but I know better. Like, why am I not doing this perfectly? I know better, but sometimes it's better to just do than it is to do it perfect.
Yes, and I think with established businesses like ours, so if anybody's listening is an established business, sometimes I feel like we have more fear of not just doing because I know for me at least, I was afraid to put something out there that wasn't polished enough, because
Right.
I was like, I'm established, I should be able to do this right the first time. But
Right.
we're always learning new changes that are happening in the world and our industry with technology. And we've just got to be fearless again.
Right, right. And stop worrying so much about the perfection and recognize that there's a point where it's just holding you back. It's not actually and it's not even a procrastination thing because I do think that sometimes we do know better, but it's like it's sometimes it's just, it's okay to just take a step forward and put something out that you can go back and work on a little bit more later and just to be continuing to progress in your business. And like you said, if you make a mistake, you can adjust, you can fix that. A lot of the times we're worried that that one mistake will cause everything everywhere to explode, and generally it doesn't.
Well, and sometimes that mistake will actually cause us to explode in the right direction because we look
Ooh,
more human, right? And we
right.
forget that.
Right. I
So
love
sometimes
that.
those little mistakes or little mess ups, you send an email and you put, hey, first name instead of their actual first name. And,
Right.
you know, it just shows you're human.
Right. And what's funny is like one of the things, like, because I work with authors a lot, I'm an author myself, and a lot of the time they're like, crap, I sent a broken link. And I'm like, actually, that's a really good opportunity to send another email and say, oops, sorry. And people will open up the second email more than they'll open up the first one. And so I'm like, you shouldn't make that a regular habit. But like you said, sometimes those mistakes can actually explode in the right direction.
Right.
Okay, so for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Andrea Pearson. This is the Andrea Pearson Show, and I focus on how belief and mindset, basically the things that you believe down to your core, will impact your actions, which then will lead to impacting your results. And if your mindsets and beliefs are off, then your actions will be off and you won't have the results that you're looking for. And so my goal is to help you challenge those mindsets and beliefs so that you can have aligned action that will lead you to success in all areas of life. And today I'm joined by Carrie Saunders. She's an online business strategist, and technical expert who helps e-commerce store owners, and hopefully that's a bunch of you guys, and course creators turn their websites into powerful, basically into machines that convert without tech overwhelm. And I really wanted to talk to her about that tech overwhelm. Carrie, could you tell us a tiny bit about your business, how long you've been in business? You actually have a location that you go to for business, right?
Yes, yes. Been in business since November 13th, 2002. I can remember it because the day before my 25th birthday, I think. I can't do the math that fast in my head. Um, and yeah, so we just found that or I found at the time, it was just a me at the time, that I could help a local boutique clothing store. I had a 9-month-old at the time, and I found that I could help her get her clothing online. This is early 2000. This is 2002.
Wow,
Um,
yeah.
Small businesses like that weren't online very much then. It was kind of a newer thing, and that's how I just started. It was all an accident while I was finishing my master's degree in electrical engineering with computer science specialty, and that's kind of how we got started.
And you've got employees and all that, right?
Yes, yes, I have my own location. I have about 7 employees right now. I guess I would have to do the math again. Some of them, they're all, they're all here in Athens, Ohio. We're located in Athens, Ohio. A few do work from home strictly, so that's why I'd have to do the math to add add up the people. But we do have our own office locations, and fun fact, we have two office cats called Mac and Bree.
And I love hearing about them. And especially if they come visit us during the interview, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, they might. You never know.
Right. Okay, so talking about more about the overwhelms. A lot of people are super overwhelmed by the tech side, and I'm like, I've got five brothers who are programmers. My dad is a programmer. I grew up surrounded by computers. My dad had a Commodore 64, and I'm very familiar with DOS prompts, and like this stuff is in my blood and in my genes, and so it doesn't overwhelm me. But I found, like when I was working with authors, authors are constantly overwhelmed by the tech, and then when I became a financial coach, I found that financial coaches were overwhelmed by that side, and I was like, everybody's overwhelmed by this, and so I was like, who do I help? And then I was like, that's when I decided I wanted to have a podcast so I could help people tackle like marketing and tackle this side of their businesses without overwhelm, because it's a big thing, that overwhelm, and it's a barrier that a lot of people can't seem to get past. So from your experience, is tech really the issue, or is there something deeper that's possibly going on?
I feel like it's more mindset and more, they just have it in their brain. Oh, I'm not good at tech. There's so many people I've heard tell me time and time again, I'm not good at tech yet. I can show them how to do something, or they figure it out on their own. And I'm like, no, look, you can do the thing you're trying to do right here. You just did it. But they
Right,
just have this script in their head that says, I'm afraid of tech. I'm not good at tech. I'm going to mess up something. What if,
right,
what if,
right,
so once I get them pulled out of that mindset and, walk alongside them as a partner,
right.
and guide them, that can really help them pull themselves out of that hole of I'm not good at this.
Right. So like I look at my mom, for instance, like she's married to my dad who is I mean he's got a cemetery in his house of old computers because he goes back and repurposes parts, all the time. And my dad's a Linux guy, and he's been on Linux
Mhm.
since, 25, 30, for a very long time, since Linux first, not since it first came out, but very, very soon after. And my mom's been using a Linux laptop, and my dad, like, Linux is super, super easy now, but back in the day,
It
it was
wasn't.
not user friendly. And my dad
Right.
taught her how to use Linux, and my mom had she had like this an email list that had like 50,000 people on it. And it was a support group for moms, and she knew how to like add people and unsubscribed them and all of this highly tech stuff. And yet she kept saying, I'm terrible at tech. And I'm like, Mom, you're doing something that most people couldn't figure out how to do. And you do it like in your sleep, you know? And so I think that a lot of people really are better with tech than they think. And it comes down to that mindset. And if they constantly tell themselves that they're terrible at tech, then that's actually going to make it harder for them to learn than if they start saying, I'm actually pretty decent at tech and I'm continuing to learn how to master tech, you know?
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. And what I was thinking of as you're talking is I try to help people say, I'm learning new tech or I'm learning how to do this tech, not I'm bad at tech. Because if it's new, if anything's new to you, really, you're going to be learning it, right?
Right,
I've had to learn how to rejigger our business the past few years because the world has changed, right? Since
right,
COVID and all that. So I've been learning how to do marketing and sales, whereas before I didn't really have to do any sort of outreaches because people
right,
just fell into our lap because of the niche we were in.
right,
So we're just learning, and we need to think of that as business owners as we're learners. We're lifelong learners, and we're learning these new things. Sometimes it's tech.
right. Right. And being a lifelong learner, I feel super passionate about that. That's one of the topics of a future episode I'm planning, and how important it is for business owners and people in general to constantly be learning. And when people put a cap on learning, they're putting a cap on their income. They're putting a cap on their potential. And if you say, hey, I know enough about this subject, then that is an invisible barrier that you're putting up that is stopping your progression, basically, because it's not possible to know everything there is on any topic. I mean, especially with how fast technology advances right now, you know, things are constantly changing. And I know that that can lead to people feeling that overwhelm. So my question for you is, how can someone shift from feeling that overwhelm and that intimidation by tech to actually using it as a growth tool?
I feel like what can really help and what I've been helping a lot of clients with in the past couple years, especially course creators, is having that tech partner beside you, having somebody that will guide you, that has no problem with passing their knowledge on to you. It could be, listening to a technology podcast in the area they need to learn. It could be, so it could be free stuff too, not just like a paid tech partner helping you. So I
Right,
think when you have somebody that's at least a few steps ahead of you, if not even more steps ahead of you, but sometimes a few steps ahead is even better because then you can relate a little bit more.
right,
That's a really good way to like take those next baby steps and really start getting that confidence and start understanding. And also just don't be afraid to try something.
right.
You're not going to burn your site down if you try something new, other than the caveat of DNS. If you don't understand DNS, please ask somebody to
Don't
help you.
don't touch DNS.
don't
That
don't
yes.
come talk to me if you have DNS questions. Don't just try to
Right.
do it on your own. I think I've saved probably 3 or 4 people the past few months on their DNS problems, but I digress. But yeah, just having somebody that can help you learn and help you get that confidence, I think is one of the biggest steps.
Right. Right. I love that so much because like yeah, there is a lot of free stuff out there. And sometimes, um the way I look at the free versus the paid is sometimes I have time and not money.
Right.
And so it's more important for me to spend my time learning. And other times I have extra cash and not enough time, and it's more important to pay somebody to help me because paying somebody it shortcuts a lot of the um, a lot of the process that you have to take. And I just said, it's so important for us to continue learning. But I also, on the flip side of that, I believe we don't have to learn everything to run a successful business. And we need to learn how to delegate and how to pay somebody to help us with the areas that we're not going to be strong in. And if we know we're not going to be strong in something and we know it's not integral for us to know how to do it, then why not consider working with somebody who knows what they're doing? And I'm turning my podcast into a pitch for you.
Well, that is something that we find lately is we have some people who want to do it all themselves, and that's great. And I
Right,
completely respect that, but it also does hold them back. So I
right,
try to encourage people. We need to find that spot where you should be doing it yourself versus, okay, you need to let go of the reins and have somebody else help control so that you
right,
can grow your business more because you need to be focusing in your own zone of genius. You
right,
know, like you said, sometimes you might have more time than you have money. So then, sure, work on doing it yourself. But once you start getting on that fence and need that transition, it's a great time to find a tech partner. some things that we do too, and you might want to look for a tech partner that's along these lines, is we will do certain things, build certain things for clients, and then we pass that knowledge on to them so they can maintain it, so they
Oh,
can maybe
nice.
make a copy of it, so they could then future, work on their website. So if you find a tech partner that's willing to pass their knowledge base on, usually that's a bit more of a trusted tech partner, I have found, at least, rather than somebody who wants to, like, oh, it's my knowledge, I don't want you to leave me and not,
Right.
pay me.
Right.
Find somebody that wants to partner with you and do the best for you, I think, is kind of my theme there.
Right, the heart of a teacher, basically. So that
Right,
I
right,
mean, the tighter you hold things to your chest, the easier it is for them to actually leave you, you know?
right.
So I did
Exactly.
want to make a comment because just to kind of rectify what I said earlier, the time versus money thing, people who don't have enough time, they pay people. People who don't have enough money, they do themselves. And then there's the people in the middle who don't have time and don't have money. And one of the things that I've been working on for myself is repeating to myself, I have all the time I need to do the things that are important. I have all the money
Mhm.
I need to do the things that are important. And if it's important, the money will be there if I just go on faith. And if I don't have enough time, like there are certain priorities that really are more important, and I will always have the time that I need to do the things that are important. Because I mean, if somebody who has um I mean, everybody has the same amount of time in their days. There's CEOs who are massively responsible for a lot of things and a lot of people, and they have the same amount of time as we do. And I'm like, if they can juggle things, and so can we.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that, and it's a very valid point because we will find the time for the things that are most important for us. It's actually been something I've been working on the past few months, is and I would encourage listeners too to do this. If you feel like you don't have enough time, here's a tip that I do. I will take a week or two and literally write down a log of what I do all day. Every time I task switch, I write down the time I'm starting it and write down what I'm doing. And now that sounds very tedious. However, it lets you go back in that after that week or two and really evaluate, what did you actually do? Start marking things down. Was this an income producing activity? Was
Right,
this just out of habit? Could I
right,
delegate this thing? So really kind of, and I do this, every couple years. It kind of depends upon, what modality I'm in my business. But I will, take that tedium and we'll
right.
mark down everything I do, because if we don't look back and look down at what we're doing, it's hard to get out of that cycle of not having enough time. So that's
Right.
actually freed up a lot of my time with doing that and eliminating things that weren't necessary anymore.
Right. And I think a lot of the time, sometimes when we feel like we're out of time, it's more overwhelm, not the fact that we can't actually tackle the things that are on our list. And when we don't sit down, and you say write it down as you're doing it, but also writing it down just in general, just seeing on paper, it makes it more approachable, and it makes it so that we're not as overwhelmed, and we can kind of start to see where it will fit in with our schedule, and make the impossible feel not so impossible. Because a lot of the time that we're wasting is because we're overwhelmed, and it's a kind of avoidance thing. We're avoiding the things that we know we're supposed to be doing because they stress us out so much, and therefore it makes them heavier than they should be, and it makes the time it takes to do them longer because we're avoiding them.
Yep.
So you've spent decades simplifying complex systems. What's one mindset shift that helps people stop overcomplicating their business?
I feel like they many times don't zoom out and look at the overall picture.
Hmm.
They might just look at, like, what the outcome is rather than how do I get through to that outcome. So they
Right,
many times will just get so hyper focused on what they want to achieve. They don't look back at all the things that have to happen for it. And when you do zoom out, sometimes that can be overwhelming.
right,
But if you start, writing these things down, whether it's in a digital notebook or paper, it can really get them out of your head so that you can process them better. I find that a lot of business owners anymore try to have everything electronic, try to have everything in their brain. And, science shows that once we've written it down, once we've, gotten it out of our brain, we can then actually act upon the items a lot better. Even just writing your goals at the beginning of the year, I'm not saying, like, New Year's resolutions, your goals for your business can help you more likely achieve them by the end of the year. Even if you never look at them again until the end of the year, you're more likely to achieve them if you've written them down than if you have them in your head. So I
Right.
feel like people just need to get things written down. Um,
Right. And they
and,
have done
and
studies on that, the
yeah,
writing
they
it
sure have.
down. Like you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. You write it down, it happens.
Right. Yeah.
Right. How does simplifying your website or systems actually lead to more sales and growth?
What I find is a lot of people will overcomplicate their website many times. I like to make the analogy that a web page, so one single page, whether it's your home page, your about page, a services page, one single page needs to have one purpose.
Mm,
Many times people will have the home page do multiple things.
right, right,
And there are some situations that might be applicable to, but most of the time it needs to do one purpose. It needs to guide them to that next step that you want them to do.
right, right. I love
So when
that.
you focus this into more of an, and I like to talk about this for like blog posts, for example, a blog post can help you with search engine optimization because we want to be writing it like an English paper to our English teacher.
Right.
One topic, you have a main topic. I mean, you're a book writer. You'll probably be able to speak to this better than I can. You have, your main topic, and then you have your headings that support that topic, subheadings that support those headings, and the paragraphs that support like the subheadings. So when we focus a page on a website to one purpose, then one, it becomes clearer to our customers. It becomes clear to search engines and to AI, so
Mm,
that you can be found easier. So all those things can really create your conversions, actually skyrocket your conversions once you
right.
simplify and pull back a page to just one purpose. It can really simplify. And I get a lot of people being like, but I do this and I do that and I do this. I'm like, yes, but we need to have a page for each of those things. Or maybe some of those things are just in your back pocket and aren't, necessary to have front and center on your website. Maybe
Right.
they're on some sub page that you can point them to, if it's appropriate. Maybe it's something you don't sell a whole lot of or service a whole lot of people with that one thing. So I try to help them get more focus and more clarity on each
Right.
page can really help those conversions and make things simpler. And once they get that, they're like, oh, like they just have this relief of,
Right.
oh, I don't have to put everything on this page. It just
Right.
gives them more relief and permission to do that.
Right. Right. And that's kind of cool. I never thought about websites that, for that reason, the whole one purpose per page and it's leading them to do the next thing, right? The next thing that you want
Mhm.
them to do. And it should be a natural process where it's not like this abrupt, oh, and the reason you're on this page is because, it should feel organic. And I know that, in newsletters, author newsletters, or pretty much anybody's newsletters, if you ask people to do more than one thing, your results they get watered down, and so people almost
Right.
always, not almost always, people will most likely do that first thing. They don't almost always do it. They will most
Mhm.
likely do the first thing, and then your results get less and less with the more things you ask people to do, and you give readers, or not just readers, sorry, business customers, whatever they're called. You give them their own version of overwhelm when you put everything on that page, or when you put every call to action at the end of an email, or at the end of a book, and you want to, like, at the end of an email or at the end of a book, pick the most important thing. And I'm going to assume for like a website, it's going to be the most important thing for that specific page. Like
Mhm.
for a contact page, the most important thing would probably be a way to contact you.
Right.
And and
Right.
and yeah, so each page would have one main thing, and the thing that you want them to do next, right?
Hmm. Yes. And if you think about, like, say, online shopping, you know, I would say probably 10, 15 years or so, when you went to checkout, you still had all the links around the page, right? You had
Right.
all the header, footer, all that. Now you see you can't really get back to the homepage. You might be able to
Right.
click on the logo, but there's no menu, and that's on
Yes.
purpose so that we're
Yeah.
focusing them on finishing that checkout and not distracting them.
Right.
And it's something we need to think about when we're on a singular page too. Yes, you're going to have menu links on there, but the body of that page should be for one purpose.
Right. And that's part of having a clean and a good sales funnel. Your landing page, your squeeze page, they should all, like, I, get rid of the menus, get rid of all of the awesome little things, the fun things for people to click on. And if you want to learn more about this product, go here. You know, you just keep them on
Right.
that page so that the only thing they can do is either click on a learn more button or a buy now button or, you know, whatever it is that they need to do. Just simplify the process.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. Okay. So, what is one reason why websites don't convert besides being too complicated, since we've already covered that?
I would say lack of trust.
Oh,
So if you don't have social proof of some sort,
mm-hmm.
that can really make it harder for somebody to be convinced to buy. So
Right.
and trust also can come. This is something I've experienced the past few years, by an uneasy way to contact you. So we
Oh,
can build
interesting.
trust with social proof, yeah, and then we can also build trust with that contact page. Is it
Right.
easy to find your contact information? Now,
Right.
you don't have to give them your phone number if that's not your jam, but make it easy for them to find a way to contact you.
Right.
There was a when I built my blog, my podcast website, I really liked this one theme. However, the place I wanted to buy it from, it was really hard to find the contact information. I almost didn't buy from them. I decided, well, it's only like $70. I'll go ahead and buy it. I later had a question, like not too long after buying it, and I kind of regretted my purchase because I had the darndest time trying to find a way to contact these people.
Jeez.
I did eventually find it, but it was so frustrating. It took me probably way long. It probably took me like 10 minutes to find their contact information. And as a busy business owner, that was super frustrating for me. And I would never go back there and buy again.
Right.
So trust and then the contact will help build that trust too, can
Right.
really be a factor to help people
So,
convert on your website.
so tell us a little bit more about like social proof. Like, how do you show that social proof? How do you show that trust on like buy pages or whatever?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And what I'd like to tell people is even though it might look a little bit messier, let's say you have a glowing review on Facebook or Instagram or some, well-known platform like that. Take a clean screen grab of that rather than retyping it up. That
Ooh,
actually boosts social proof a little bit more because we as users understand where that like button is on Facebook, understand where the
right.
heart button is on Instagram. So we know that you didn't make that, or at least less likely that you made that testimonial up. So if you have testimonials on external websites, actually creating clean screen grabs, even though they may not be quite with your theme, actually will boost conversions and trust a little bit more. And I
Interesting.
also encourage business owners to ask. People don't write reviews unless they're really mad or, they really love you, right?
Right.
And so, but you have those people who are your fans that maybe are busy and do love you, but just didn't think about it. So asking for testimonials shortly after providing the service or the product, whatever you're selling, is a really good idea because people are more likely to review if you've been asked, and
Right.
especially if you make it very easy.
Now, here's a question for you. This is on topic, but it's more about me than it is about my listeners. Sometimes I get emails, and some of my listeners are authors, and actually, this could apply to pretty much any business owner. So sometimes I get emails about my books that are super enthusiastic. And then when they post their reviews, it's not as, because they know people are going to be looking at them. They're like, yeah, I got to be perfect. And so sometimes I'll actually ask the reader, like, can I have permission to share that email? And that, and then of course I don't share it unless they say yes. But what about taking a screen copy of that and making their email address invisible,
Mhm.
but putting that on a website? Is that unprofessional?
No, I think that's actually really good too, especially because people recognize it is an email from somebody. And that's actually a good point because when you take that screenshot on social media, it is a good idea to kind of, at least blur out their last name just for, their
Privacy.
sake, for privacy's sake. So yes, I would definitely think it's good to ask. I have done that before. I've asked whether it's okay to share an email.
Right.
And obviously, I'm going to blank out their email and maybe their last name too. But I do think that that's does have a place on a website, especially if you can, find a neat way to put it on there. And a lot of people, what they'll do too is they'll, have a few testimonials and then maybe a link to see more.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with doing that still nowadays, especially for people who might be on the fence. Maybe you have a bigger ticket item and you need to have more trust conveyed to people, then having a page of testimonials is also a good idea.
So that page, though, that's a link to see more, and that's taking them away from the main page.
It could be, yeah. But if your website's tight, then it might not be a problem. It
Okay.
kind of that's a good point there, and it can be a gray area depending upon how your website's structured. That's for
Right.
sure.
Right. Okay. So now that we've overwhelmed all of the listeners,
Hopefully not.
like get all those screenshots, get all those likes, get all those reviews, all that. That part, like I have found, I love focusing on how to get reviews. That's one of my favorite topics, and it overwhelms so many business owners. Getting those positive reviews, and that's not the topic of this episode, but how would you simplify this process for people who are easily overwhelmed by that trust? Like how can they break it down into manageable tasks?
What I like to do is I have a folder specifically for testimonials. I have one for my podcast, so it's under my podcast folder, and then I
Mm.
have one for just general ones. So whenever something like that comes in, I go ahead and do that screenshot right then and there and put it in the folder. And then I know whenever in the future I might want a testimonial, I don't have to go digging anymore.
Ooh.
I have taken that, 1 minute task at the time and saved it and stored it away so that I can come back later and find that testimonial that is the one that fits whatever page I'm building or whomever's asking for a testimonial.
Right. That makes it a 1 minute project instead of a 2 hour search.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference between someone who is stuck working in their business versus someone who is strategically growing it?
That's a really good question and something I've been actually working on lately too, which is one of the reasons why I did that task listing. Um, is we need to balance the working in our business versus working on our business. It's very important. If we are too one-sided in either direction, I find that's when things in the future start to fall apart. If we aren't bringing in continual leads, whether you're selling, physical products or services, then you're going to later, have lost revenue. But if you're also not working on the either the services or the products and delivering them, and working on your business part, you're going to like lose your customers you do have. So you do have to have that balance of working on versus in your business. And I try to split it. I'm trying to think how much I split it. I think I try to split it like 40-60, where I'm working on my business 40 and 60 on in my business, just because we're a service-based business. So we kind of have to, work a lot for our clients. So
Right,
that's how I try to balance it.
right, right. Okay, so we've challenged mindset a little bit. Are there any other actions that you can think of that can help people take a new mindset of I can handle this, that this is that tech is not as overwhelming as they thought? Is there anything else that you can think of that will help make it more practical in the day-to-day running of a business?
I feel like you need to pick, or at least from my mindset, what's the easiest next best task?
Hmm.
Try not to find that big behemoth, unless your mindset works better on eating the frog first. But sometimes we need little baby steps, whenever we're overwhelmed. So I find, that next most simple task. What's the little thing you can do? It could be a 5-minute task. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take you, but take that next little simple thing. Is it opening your website application and starting a new blog page? Is it, you know, taking some screenshots of testimonials? Where do you, or looking at your page and deciding where should I put these testimonials? Maybe you don't actually put them on there, but just making some decisions. um, I also find if we separate our decision time from our doing time, that can really help too.
Oh,
So we can be in deciding mode for maybe an hour or two, and then we switch into the doing mode maybe later in the day. That way we aren't brain switching,
right,
switching the sides of our brain too much. That's something I found I recently was doing too much of, is I was deciding and doing too often. And
right.
I needed to separate the two so that I could be more efficient and more effective and less overwhelmed with the things I was doing.
Right, that's a really valid point, really big point, because like the switching cost, even going from that analytical to the more creative stuff, that's it takes time that, take, everybody knows it takes time to get into the zone, into that flow state, and if you're constantly doing that, you're going to be interrupting your flow, interrupting that creative, energy. And then you're also going to be interrupting the other side of things, because you do need, like, I do believe that the analytical side does take some creativity, especially when you're trying to analyze a way out of a problem. It does take creativity, but that's not the same thing as implementing the things. And so if you're constantly going back and forth, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You're making it so that you can't progress. And that's kind of where I've been the last couple of weeks. I'm like, I've got so much to do, and I'm like looking, I'm like making decisions, and then the next day I start making more decisions instead of actually applying the decisions that I've made already.
Yeah, and sometimes time blocking can really help that, setting time blocks where this is decision time, and then, pick which way your brain works. If you're a morning person, maybe you make the decisions in the morning and the implementing in the afternoon, or
Mm,
flip it if you're more of an afternoon person.
right.
But I feel like time blocking or even theming your days where, Monday's decision and admin day and Tuesday's implementation day, work with your brain is what I like to do. And sometimes I'd like to give people permission too, because I've been doing this myself. If you sit down to do a task and it is grueling and it is hard, sometimes it's okay to give yourself permission to be like, okay, my brain is not in this mindset right now. I'm going to commit to doing this tomorrow at this
Mm,
time.
right.
Not really procrastinating
Right.
in and of itself, but recognizing where is my brain right now?
Right.
What am I dealing with, possibly personally or emotionally?
Right.
Maybe I can't do this creative or this high tech thing right now because I've got this other stuff going on in my head.
Right.
When am I going to do it? But set a deadline so that we're not actually truly procrastinating with it, but we also are being kind to ourselves too.
Right, right. Giving yourselves grace, because like one day your 100% only can be like 20. And those
Yeah.
days are not the days to do that grueling task. That's when you end up beating yourself over the head. And that also extends that kind of that burnout that you feel like you're in. It makes it
Hmm.
last longer when you don't just give yourself permission the day of to just be like, you know what? Today's not the day. Tomorrow will be better.
Right. And sometimes we can do little prep things on that day that we can't really do it, but we can do these little tiny admonish type of prep things that
Right.
releases some of that anxiety and overwhelm that the next day we can actually be more productive.
Right. So I have one final question for you, I think. It might lead to more. So I'm talking to the busy, like the people the first person that comes to mind is a mom, a young mom who's doing an online business. But then also comes to mind, I have young kids too, but also somebody in my stage where I have parents who need help, need care, and every day looks different, and I never know what that day is going to look like. And so for people whose schedules are not predictable, like how can they set an admin day? How can they do I'm going to do this tomorrow when they wake up tomorrow and it's completely shot? I mean, what advice do you have for people whose schedules are really unpredictable right now?
I can totally relate to that honestly because I have 3 kids. They're all in college, and I've been the mom that worked from home with the kids, even though
Right.
I had employees as well. But still, even now my kids are out of college, we will have clients who have emergencies. Like
Mm,
yesterday, I wasn't able to do my morning routine because I had a client with a website that was down that we had to jump on and fix.
right.
So that's a place where I feel like you should give yourself grace. Sometimes we are pulled off, and I've had, parents with health issues and stuff like that. Both of them are actually gone now. And so there's sometimes where we have to, you know, be okay with where we are right now. You know,
Right.
right now my kids need more attention. They're having a stressful day themselves. They're melting down. I need to be mom right now.
Right.
Okay, well, so then where can I fit what I wanted to do in today? You need to be thinking this through your head. Okay, well, I think tomorrow during nap time I can get X, Y, and Z done. But I know I can't get more than that done. And so I think having like multiple backup plans, so say you plan for tomorrow, but then, okay, they don't feel well. Now they're sick and crying because they've got a snotty nose.
Right.
How do we build these buffers in? Try to think creatively. Is there somebody that, if you're a busy mom, is there a friend that can help and, take your kids for a couple hours? Sometimes all we need is like a couple hours of concentration, you know, Do we, you know, postpone it for a whole week? Maybe we know this whole week is going to be shot and we just need to be okay with postponing it a whole week and just writing down what's the most important things to get done. If I
Right.
got these top 1 to 3 things done this week, would I be happy? Would I feel successful? Don't pick 10, don't pick
Mm.
15, don't pick 20. Three, just
Right.
three. I try to focus on 3 things for a week and that's it because I know my day gets interrupted. I'm the boss. I get lots of questions. I help staff whenever things go awry, if, website's down or something. So we've just got to be more realistic, I think, on what we can accomplish. And if we get more than that done, then great, that's a bonus. But what are those three most important things that's going to move our business forward and or serve our clients or that we have right now?
Right. And that led me, I mean, the 3 things a week, like when my kids were really little, I mean, they're not, I keep saying that they're young, but the youngest just turned 7. I'm like, they're not really, really little anymore. But when they were, I didn't go day by day. I went week by week, and I did basically that. I was like, what is the most important thing I can do this week, and is it realistic to get it done this week? And I tried to have 2 or 3 things that I was like, you know what? And sometimes some weeks it was just I knew it would be busy, so I was like, this is the one thing I'm going to do this week. And instead of saying, crap, it's Monday, I didn't get it done, I had time throughout the week to focus on it in batches.
Right.
And also, I do want to make one little point. There's a fine line between emergencies and boundaries. Somebody
Hmm.
else's emergencies can become more and more of an emergency, and you have to recognize it's going to keep happening, and you have to set boundaries. And that needs to be boundaries on your time, that needs to be boundaries on your emotions. And like one off emergencies are a thing, but when it becomes a pattern, and it's like, say, it's that one client that's constantly having an emergency that needs you right now, like in my case, or if it's like a kid who is old enough to be independent, but they're so used to relying on you, and you're so used to providing their every needs. But the kid's 5, the kid could probably get his own drink and does not need your help. There's boundaries. And as a parent or as a business owner, our job is to make sure people know what our boundaries are. And it's up to us to respect ourselves enough to make sure that we are not giving everything we have to people and teaching them that we have no boundaries. Like, it's important for us to set our boundaries and respect ourselves and the people that we're around, because it's not respecting them either if we're constantly giving in to their every single emergency. That is not allowing them to become an independent person. And I'm like, I'm constantly having to learn boundaries. It's a big challenge for me.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, and it plays into having employees too.
Oh, yeah.
Employees and in kids. You know, have your set available time for, especially if you have employees, have your set available time for questions, and then you have a certain time where it's just focus time. So it
Right.
can be like just mommy time. When you have
Right.
kids. Right now mommy's working. I used to do that with my kids when they were little. We had a certain time where I would put something that they loved on the TV, and especially when they got out of napping periods. And I
Right.
was like, right now, mommy needs to concentrate, watch this favorite movie that you have. And then when it's done, we're going to do X. So
Right.
you can do that with your kids. And then you can also do that with your employees you obviously don't talk to them in that same way because they're adults, but at
Here's your
least you hope
favorite
not.
show.
Watch it. Yeah. Or at least you hope not until you're like, in the morning, ask me all the questions you need by 10 o'clock. My IM's going off, my email's going off. I'm going to be focusing on the business. After lunch, I'll check back in with you. So setting those boundaries as to when you can be available for your employees as well as your customers. One thing I did, early on was, when we have close clients that we work with, white glove type of clients, I let them know I'm not checking my email after hours.
Yeah.
However, if you do actually have a true emergency, here's what you do to get a hold of me.
Right.
So they know how to get a hold of me when that's an emergency. They respect my time, that I'm not going to be emailing them back after
Mm.
hours or on the
Right.
weekends unless it's actually a true emergency. And so we have wonderful clients that 100% respect that and really will only contact us after hours. If it's really a true, site down emergency, somebody's trying to hack into their site, we need to fix it, I will drop everything to do that. But if it's not an emergency, I have set the boundaries of
Right.
myself that you're probably not going to hear from me after hours. Even Facebook messages from potential business people, I don't only respond to my friends on the weekend
Right.
unless I see that a client actually might have an emergency. Um, it's just a boundary I've set to have a healthier, happier life, and so that I can
Right.
serve them better. It's not being selfish either.
Right.
I've got it that helps me serve them better.
Right. Right. And to the moms that are just cringed about putting their kids in front of the TV, it becomes a problem when the TV is a babysitter all the time. But like
Right.
it can be used like value in a valuable way where it's not neglect, you're available. And because I used to tell people like my kids never get screen time, and especially when they're really little, they never got screen time. And so that screen time was valuable to the kids too,
Right.
because
Right.
it was something that they felt like they earned, and it truly took their attention because they didn't get it all the time, and so like if you're constantly putting the kid in front of the TV and telling them to watch a show, that is a problem, but it
That's
is
totally
not.
different.
It's
Yes.
totally different. It's totally different from like, and don't feel guilt. Like because I can feel the mom guilt already from saying, put your kid in front of the TV so you can do an hour or two of work. That you should not feel guilt about that.
Right. Yeah. And you have a really good valid point of like bringing that home because, that was a special time for them. And that wasn't their whole day.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
It was how we both coped with, work as a working mom from
Right,
home.
right,
And there would be times that I would, explain to them, like I would explain to an adult, hey, mommy needs to work on this client thing right now. That's very important. I will, give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and they would start to understand, okay, mommy needs 5 or 10 minutes.
right,
Mommy will be there in just a few minutes. And
right.
my thing isn't urgent at the moment. Of course, if it's urgent, I would have dropped everything. I
Oh,
didn't say
right,
that to
right.
everything, they asked, but, when it was, a little thing that and they wanted to like play or something, I'd be like, yes, we will play, but I need 5 or 10 minutes. And they would
Right,
then start to respect my time.
right,
And I would, there would be that mutual respect there. And they need to learn the patience and the waiting
right,
too.
right,
The kids need to learn that.
right, right. And also like it's part of raising healthy children. If you are not their entertainment, like you shouldn't be their entertainment, because if you are, then that destroys your entire day. And I remember I had a really close friend who was like, I'm exhausted every day. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, I do this with my child, and I do this with my child, do this with, I'm like, your child's not independent. Your child needs to learn that they need to entertain themselves. You're there to guide them, not to be
Right.
their entertainment.
Yes.
There's a lot of mom guilt associated with all of this.
Oh yes. And I'm just wanted to give people some permission that,
Right.
like you're saying, you're not their entertainment 100% of the time. And, you can teach them to wait a second.
Right, right. It's called boundaries. If you don't have boundaries, your kids won't learn boundaries. And that
Correct.
will impact them significantly throughout their life. Like they need to learn
Yes.
boundaries, and they learn them by watching you, right?
Right. Right.
Thank you so much for joining me. We went from tech to parenting.
We did.
But like it's super important. It's important to learn all of these skills because it influences your tech, and the more overwhelmed you are about things on the side and not getting stuff done, the more overwhelming little things like creating a website. It's not really a little thing, but like the more organization you have in other areas of your life, it's going to impact your business. It's going to impact the tech side of things. And
It
anyway,
is. And I like to remind people we're all human. We're not just, working robots. We have a social life, we have family. We
right,
need to make that balance there.
right.
We need to make ourselves happy and healthy in all aspects.
Right, exactly. Um, yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, so those of you guys who are listening or watching, if this conversation resonated with you, I'm going to have I've got a link to her, I think it's your LinkedIn site, right? That you gave me.
Yeah, I can also give you my podcast too if you like.
Yeah, send me your podcast. I'll add that as well. And I'll put that in the show notes or the description of the video. And if you want more conversations like this, where we take that mindset, that belief, we challenge it, we replace it hopefully with a better one, so that your actions are better, so that you can have more success in all areas of life. Make sure that you are subscribed. And thank you again, Carrie, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Yep. And we'll talk to everyone later. Bye.